Amazing transformation. CEO reveals unexpected truth when poor mother reaches for her hidden bags. Amelia Johnson stood in the sleek, glass-walled boardroom of the corporate office, her hands trembling as she clutched the straps of her worn bag. Today was not just another routine cleaning shift, it felt seismic. She had seen it all: the executives in their tailored suits, bantering over champagne like their lives mattered more than anyone else's. And yet, here she was, a 50-year-old cleaning lady, an invisible specter in their world of opulence. The room buzzed with an electric tension, as if the very air anticipated what was about to unfold, when their gazes locked. Amelia and Nathan Black, her former boss, now a powerful CEO. The recognition was palpable. She had once bustled through this space, fueled by the need to provide for her children. Late nights spent cleaning had often turned into moments where she would scribble ideas in the margins of notebooks, tucked away in her bags, dreams too big for the life she lived. That same fervor surged within her now, she could feel it igniting every nerve in her body. Nathan, a man who had overlooked her contributions once, couldn't ignore her now, standing fiercely in front of him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. I deserve to be heard, she said, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. The plans she cherished were laid out like a fragile flower, vivid and vulnerable against the stark backdrop of the polished boardroom. With every word, she gestured toward those pages of her hopes, finger tracing lines of ink that told her story. Would they dismiss her again? The thought coiled like a serpent in her stomach. Doubt gnawed at Nathan, his gaze shifting between Amelia's fire and the cold, indifferent faces of his executive board. The weight of their expectant stares felt like chains binding him to a life that had never reflected who he truly was. Unease swirled inside him, magnified by the echoes of his past decisions. How had he overlooked the very people that formed the backbone of his empire? Would this moment come to define his legacy? The compulsion to protect what he had built clashed violently with a dawning desire to uplift someone who had dared to dream. The air thickened, saturated with unwelcome gravity. Pushed by unseen forces, Nathan felt the walls of propriety closing in on him. His conscience wrestled against the innate need to conform, to maintain the status quo that had once felt safe. A choice loomed before him: embrace humanity or retreat to the comfort of silence and power. Amelia's hope, now bathed in raw emotion, clung to the space between them. Each heartbeat resonated like a drum, a definitive call for justice, for recognition, for what could be. As her vision scoured the room, it landed back on Nathan's face, etched in conflict, desperately searching for resolution. The weight of their shared histories pressed heavily on the moment, a stillness that threatened to shatter at any second. With her bags open and dreams lingering in the fluorescent light, Amelia's breath hitched. Would she secure not just her future, but the futures of so many others who felt unseen? As Nathan stood on the precipice of decision, uncertainty crackled in the air, leaving a question that spiraled into the void. Would he reach for courage, or allow this fleeting moment to slip away, just as dreams often do? The room held its breath, a taut string vibrating on the cusp of revelation. Amelia could feel the gravity of the moment press against her chest, each beat echoing her fervent desire to transcend the confines of her existence. She had spent years shrouded in anonymity, her dreams tucked away in notebooks, hidden behind the disdainful glances of privilege. Yet here she stood, willing to expose her vulnerabilities, laying bare her aspirations before an audience that had neglected her once. Nathan's eyes flickered, as if colors once muted by corporate routine had suddenly ignited with possibility. He breathed deeply, as if trying to inhale the tenacity radiating from Amelia. It stirred an unexpected echo within him. Would he become the man who transformed not just his life, but the lives of those like her? Tears threatened to brim in Amelia's eyes as she searched for an anchor in Nathan's unwavering gaze. "What do you want, Amelia?" He finally asked, his voice low, almost reverent, as if the mere inquiry could reset the trajectories of both their lives. The words hung between them, an invitation to break the shackles of silence they each bore. I want my voice to matter. I want to teach my children that their worth is more than the labels others put on them, she replied, steadiness filling her words. There it was a point of no return. The jaded part of her trembled at the thought of asking for anything, but the fierce mother within her stood resolute. This wasn't merely about her, it was a reckoning for every unheard dream. The tension in the room thickened as Nathan weighed the cost of this unfolding drama. The ornate, corporate structure behind him began to feel less like a fortification and more like a prison designed to silence people like Amelia. While the board members shifted uneasily, hoping for a swift resolution, Nathan's mind raced, contemplating how he could pivot towards this emerging vision. Suddenly, an undeniable conflict danced in his mind, the possibility of empowerment against the fear of upheaval. Was he prepared to risk the fragile ecosystem he'd built? What if embracing this opportunity led to backlash? Yet, beneath the doubt lay a nascent yearning. Could he be the catalyst for change? I can't change the world alone, Nathan, Amelia continued, her voice steady, fortified by the fire within. But if you give me the chance, I'll help change this place from the inside out. You have the power to inspire others to follow. The air hummed with electric possibility. Amelia could feel the embers of hope crackling to life as she voiced her ambitions. The reaction had transformed. She watched as some board members exchanged doubtful glances, but others leaned forward. Curiosity piqued a shift that suggested she had sparked interest. As Nathan's mind wrestled with the implications of her offer, he took a step closer to the precipice. What do you have in mind? He asked, his tone laden with cautious optimism. At that moment, everything hinged on her words. Amelia felt the burden of a decision. A plan breached the surface of her thoughts: employee mentorship programs, workshops to empower underrepresented voices, initiatives that could bridge dreams to reality. But before she could articulate her ideas, the door swung open, and the COO entered the room, interrupting the charged atmosphere. With a haughty look, he broke their fragile exchange. Nathan, we need to discuss quarterly projections. Time slipped away, and Amelia's heart sank. What she had dared to initiate teetered on the brink of dismissal. She had come too far to retreat into the shadows now. What's to stop us from doing both? Nathan countered, surprising even himself. The question launched like a firework into the air, illuminating the unsteady ground they stood upon. The COO paused, a frown creasing his forehead. Are you implying we listen to her? Yes, Nathan declared, his voice steadying. We bring her in, and we listen. As eyes turned towards Amelia, the world shifted once more. Would this gamble lead to the first steps of a shift in culture, or would they retreat once the flames of ambition cooled? The answer drew near, but the path was still shrouded in uncertainty. Amelia felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. The moment had arrived, but it was just the beginning. A new chapter of her life was unfolding. With Nathan in her corner, would she have the courage to seize it? Would the facade of silence finally shatter, granting her the freedom to soar, both personally and professionally? Something incomparably audacious was afoot, and with it came the weight of possibility. Yet the question loomed large: would they nurture this alliance into something transformative, or would doubt extinguish the flames of their shared ambition? Amelia's pulse quickened as Nathan's bold declaration resonated in the room, creating ripples of unease among the board members. She could feel the weight of their gazes, a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Even amidst the chaos brought on by the COO, an ember of realization flickered within her. This was her moment, a test of both her readiness and the potential for change that lay in their hands. As the COO started to protest, Nathan held up a hand, silencing the objections. We have an opportunity here, he asserted. Let us explore it. Something in his tone twisted the air. A bridge was being built, one where once there had been a chasm. Amelia inhaled sharply, appreciating the small victory while wrestling with burgeoning fears. What if her ideas failed? But the steely resolve built during years of silent begging for recognition surged within her. She was not merely a voice among many, she was an agent of transformation. "All right," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "If we're really going to do this, we need to understand where we're starting from. We need data, stories, and most of all, a platform for those voices that have been silenced." The room buzzed with a tension that sharpened her thoughts. She moved past initial uncertainties, crafting her vision into concrete action. Each proposed workshop morphed into a strategic initiative in her mind: monthly mentorship meetups for employees to share their experiences, panels featuring voices from all walks of life, collaborative projects designed to showcase untapped talent within the company. She was mapping the future, a future where others could finally share in her newfound confidence. "Amelia, can you formalize this?" Nathan asked. "We need a proposal." The validation felt like a cloak, wrapping around her like warmth on a winter's day. For the first time, it wasn't just about survival, it was about compelling change. "I can do that," she nodded, each word laced with conviction. "But I'll need support both from you and the board. This has to be a project everyone believes in. It can't just come from me." Nathan leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What do you suggest?" "Start with a small committee. Include employees who reflect diverse backgrounds, people who we often overlook. We can gather their insights, understand their challenges. From there, we can build tailored workshops that inspire engagement based on their real experiences." As she spoke, the COO shifted restlessly, a mixture of skepticism and reluctant intrigue brewing within him. Amelia could sense his apprehension. These ideas challenged the status quo, held a risk that could recoil on them all. The board members murmured amongst each other, but she held her ground, amplifying her vision. It was no longer just an idea that needed convincing, it was a movement demanding recognition. To foster authentic representation, they needed to amplify these voices, intertwining them into the fabric of the company's culture. With newfound purpose, Amelia's thoughts crackled with energy. Each concept unfurled like the pages of a well-loved book, a stirring narrative of resilience unfolding. Nathan's expression shifted, curiosity alight in his eyes. "Will you lead this, Amelia? Will you spearhead the initiative?" A pulse of exhilaration thrummed through her. She struggled to contain the surge of emotions coursing through her. Doubt still tugged at the edges of her mind, but faith in her vision swelled brighter. "Yes," she breathed, but with a promise for transparency. "We need to hold regular check-ins and share progress as we move forward. This has to be a collective journey." Excitement rippled through the room, mingling with uncertainty. As discussions evolved, Amelia remained at the forefront, engaged and assertive, but fear lingered. Would they uphold the vision she had laid bare, or would the weight of traditional thinking stifle the flames of ambition? In that moment of clarity, Amelia promised herself that she would push through the fear, exploring uncharted territory for the sake of change, not just for herself, but for every silent voice still seeking recognition. But beneath that promise, a new unease simmered. What underlying forces would resist this reshaping of the very company culture itself? The time was drawing near for her to confront those who thrived within the shadows of status quo complacency. The walls of silence around her were beginning to echo with the sound of change, but could Amelia truly navigate the storm ahead without losing herself in the process? As she gazed at Nathan, determination mingled with the simmering dread of the battles that lay ahead, ensuring that the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. The journey to realize her ambition had commenced, but the path forward was tangled with challenges she could not yet foresee. Amelia felt the electric charge of her moment as she stood before the board, ready to transform the groundwork of her company. But as excitement coursed through her, a twinge of apprehension settled like lead in her stomach. The weight of potential failure loomed ominously over her thoughts. That night, she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by scattered papers, her laptop lit up with blank pages waiting to be filled with transformative ideas. Each time she imagined the words "proposal for cultural change" at the top of her document, doubt crept closer. What if, after all this time, she still wasn't enough. The anxiety felt like a vice, tightening as she sifted through her initial draft. She exhaled sharply, reminding herself how far she had come. Years in meetings where she had kept quiet were behind her. The board's unexpected support didn't merely mark a path forward, it also required courage. She wasn't just proposing workshops and committees, she was pitching a revolution, a shake-up of traditions she had once feared to challenge. The gravity of that realization sent a shiver through her, but that fear began to evolve into a rallying cry within. Amelia set her mind to work. She drafted the proposal with an urgency aimed at outlining her intentions clearly. Using straightforward language, she mapped out her vision, detailing the importance of inclusion and active voice. She realized that to truly foster a culture of change, they couldn't merely bandage wounds, they needed to dig deep to uncover systemic issues. As she typed, snippets of conversations from years past echoed in her mind. Those encounters with her colleagues, shared glances of understanding during brainstorming sessions, or sighs of exasperation during meetings where voices went unheard, fueled her resolve. Each sentence she formed was galvanized by the hopes of those who had been silenced, yet beneath the fervor of her writing, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. Would she be able to gather enough buy-in from the committee members, particularly those whose beliefs had been entrenched for years? Breaking down the walls of skepticism would take more than just her passion, it required fostering a shared responsibility among the entire board, a daunting task indeed. After several hours, she leaned back and stared at her proposal. It wasn't perfect, yet the careful articulation of her ideas fostered a burgeoning sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just a reflection of her ambitions, it was a testament to her readiness to confront the challenge ahead. In the days that followed, Amelia presented her proposal to Nathan, who was impressed but critical, reminding her, "Amelia, it's essential to foresee not just the immediate reactions but also the pushback we might encounter from the board members who feel threatened. They've held significant power and privilege for so long." She nodded, acutely aware of the vigilance required to anticipate dissenting opinions, the confrontation of deep-rooted fears within her colleagues. "Then we'll prepare for it," she replied, their shared determination solidifying into a plan. What they needed was a strategy not only to present her ideas but to invite collaboration to transform the unknown into a shared vision. With each discussion and strategy session, Amelia began to realize her own growth. No longer was she the quiet observer, she had become the architect of her narrative. Yet that realization was double-edged, giving rise to deep-seated fears of confrontations and challenging the status quo. Every decision, every conversation inching closer to unveiling her plan, felt like a tightrope walk over a chasm of uncertainty. Would the risk derail her purpose? But it wasn't until she stumbled upon a piece of feedback from a junior employee, an honest and candid observation about feeling unseen, that everything shifted. That one voice resonated with her, it became a new turning point. With this echo of reality ringing in her mind, Amelia stood at a precipice. The task ahead would require courage, advocacy, and resilience. She was resolute about facing resistance, powered by the need for change. But as the day drew closer for her to confront the board, a lingering question flickered in her mind: could she maintain her authenticity while standing firm against those who resisted her vision? The next meeting promised an emotional confrontation, and Amelia braced herself. The moment had come to face not just the board, but also her own insecurities. Would she emerge as the leader she always aspired to be, or would the pressures of the corporate machine overwhelm her ambition? As the day of the board meeting approached, apprehension braided itself into Amelia's thoughts. She would stride into that conference room carrying not just her proposal but also the weight of uncharted expectations and stifled ambitions. With each tick of the clock, she felt time slip through her fingers like sand, heightening her sense of urgency. In the unrestricted quiet of her evenings, she engaged in a ritual that had quickly become necessary, pacing her living room while reciting her key points aloud. Her voice, once shaky and filled with uncertainty, had taken on a steadiness that surprised her. Each articulation pushed her doubts toward the periphery of her mind. She was no longer merely a participant in the echo chamber of corporate dialogue, she was preparing to disrupt it, the night before the meeting, she meticulously reviewed every line of her proposal, each dedicated paragraph morphing from mere text into an emblem of her convictions. What wavered within her was not the fear of rejection, it was the very essence of the change she envisioned. Words like inclusivity, transparency, and collaboration carried the weight of those whom she sought to empower. They were not just buzzwords, they were lifelines, yet, amidst her preparation, an unsettling thought clung to her: what if the very language she chose would alienate those who needed to be swayed? She envisioned the board's faces, some familiar, others steeped in decades of tradition, blinking at her, perhaps bewildered or resistant to her proposals. In those brief seconds, she felt her identity dissolve into endless possibilities: a revolutionary or a rebel, a leader or an outcast. As dawn broke, the sunlight filtered through her window, illuminating the kitchen where she had spent countless hours preparing. But today felt different. Amelia placed her hand on her heart, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. This was not just about her aspirations, it was about redefining the very fabric of her workplace. Arriving at the meeting room, she felt the ambience crackle with anticipation. The board members filed in, exchanging glances laden with skepticism and curiosity. Sitting at the table later became a combat zone, with her as the lone warrior poised to challenge an empire of conventionality. With a mixture of vulnerability and courage, Amelia began her presentation. As she spoke, her voice gained strength. She demanded attention with facts, personal anecdotes, and research that backed her propositions. Each line flowed seamlessly into the next, an unyielding current that urged change in ways that felt both daunting and exhilarating. Yet, the tension in the room was palpable. As she expected, critical questions began to emerge. Some questioned the financial implications, others challenged the necessity for such radical change. Each question felt like a test of her resolve, drawing her away from her central narrative. The initial wave of enthusiasm began to wane, and she recognized the palpable unease in her supporters' faces. It was not until Violet, a member known for her traditionalist views, leaned forward, interrupting her flow. "Are you suggesting we overhaul a system that has functioned for years without any significant issues? That requires a leap of faith, one that many may not be willing to take." She defended the status quo, her tone laced with doubt. In that moment, Amelia's heart raced not with fear, but with an emergent clarity. Violet was not merely a roadblock but a reflection of her own former self, the hesitant employee she had once been, clamoring for validation. Gathering her thoughts, Amelia paused, recognizing that perhaps the most potent response was not to counter aggressively but to connect. "I understand your concerns, Violet," she replied, gauging the reaction of the others. "But history is littered with examples of companies failing to adapt. We must learn to embrace change as part of our growth, fostering a culture that welcomes diverse viewpoints actively." Amelia realized she had shifted from a defensive position to an empowering one, unraveling the anxiety that once wrapped tightly around her purpose. The board appeared curious now, leaning slightly forward in their chairs rather than reclined in skepticism. With newfound resolve, she knew the real battle wasn't against them, it was against her ingrained doubts. As she continued her presentation, she could feel the ground beneath her shifting. Her eyes caught Nathan's, his expression a mix of pride and approval. But then, a thought pierced through her resolve: what if this apology wasn't about just her understanding of the group, but about revealing herself in a way that invoked empathy? Today had become the culmination of all her fears and ambitions, yet the journey had only just begun. As the meeting drew to a close and decisions loomed on the horizon, Amelia stood at the brink of transformation, not only for the company but also for herself. In the silence that followed, an unexpected question emerged in her mind: was she truly ready to navigate the fallout of pushing for change, especially if it meant dismantling colleagues' comfort zones? The silence in the meeting room felt charged, a palpable tension that clung to the air like humidity before a storm. Amelia stood at the center of it, her mind racing through potential repercussions. The whispers of doubt that had once clouded her thoughts were now replaced with a revolutionary fervor. Her heart echoed the notion that she was on the precipice of igniting a significant shift. Yet, Could she sustain this momentum in the face of impending criticism? As discussions progressed, doubt crept back. She watched as members exchanged cautious glances, depicting skepticism. Each raised eyebrow or hesitant nod from the traditionalists seemed like an insurmountable barrier. The veneer of confidence she had polished all week began to feel thin, like a fragile glass sculpture ready to shatter. Just as she anticipated the final push of persuasion to break through, another blockade arose. Danny, the CFO, notorious for his pinpointed critiques, joined the fray. "Amelia, even if your ideas are compelling, what guarantees do you have that this will translate into profits? Or worse, what if we face a backlash from our loyal customer base?" The question hung heavy in the air, like an unwanted guest, and her face flushed warm with adrenaline. Amelia clenched her jaw, fighting against the urges of self-doubt. How could she articulate her vision without sounding defensive? How could she steer this conversation back to her mission? An unexpected surge of clarity coursed through her veins. "Danny," she began, her voice unwavering, "what we often see as loyal customers are voices stifled in a rigid system. They desire engagement and authenticity. We have an opportunity, not merely to meet standards but to exceed them by inviting real conversation, one that empowers our clientele to believe in us again." The shift in her delivery resonated. For the first time, she leaned into her vulnerability, sharing stories of employees who had long felt unseen, along with customers whose voices had been muted for years. With each revelation, the board members began to sit up straighter, some murmuring softly. Exchange of ideas was beginning to open their minds. Amelia's heart softened some of the sharp edges of her rising anxiety. She realized that she didn't merely demand change, she was fostering a culture of support. She understood then, her proposal wasn't merely a professional venture but a human one, a connection to the very fabric that wove their company together. As she navigated through financial projections hand in hand with emotional appeal, Amelia noticed a flicker of curiosity from Violet again. Perhaps her earlier defenses were beginning to crack. "All we really need is trust," Amelia continued. "Trust from those who have built their lives alongside this company, and trust from our customers that we're willing to evolve. Change is always risky, but often, stagnation bears a far greater danger." Each assertion felt like a restored thread in an unraveling tapestry, binding the audience closer to her vision. A shifting momentum began to brew, perhaps the board was beginning to shed the heavy cloaks of tradition and doubt. Yet, with every gust of encouragement came the chilling breath of reality, whispering in her ear. Hope could flicker but also fade. Just as she sensed a breakthrough within the collective consciousness of the room, Nathan spoke up again. "Can we commit to this change? What steps can we take to ensure we remain accountable?" His question landed as both a challenge and an opening. She realized that while today had turned into a great leap forward, it was merely a step. Amelia straightened her shoulders, embracing the role of a leader. "We can take actionable steps by forming cross-functional teams to drive this initiative and track our progress transparently," she proposed, envisioning the collaboration that could fuel their transformation. The meeting concluded, but Amelia sensed unresolved tension brewing around her. With decisions still pending, her heart raced as she reflected on the journey ahead. Was this merely the beginning of dismantling long-standing frameworks or the tip of an iceberg that could lead to overwhelming resistance? The real challenge loomed large. How would she manage the cascading effects of her pursuit for change, especially when she knew betrayal could nestle in familiar places? Amelia stepped out of the meeting room, the weight of her heart pounding in her chest. The air felt electric, and despite the progress she'd made, unease knotted in her stomach. It dawned on her that the real battle lay ahead, one fought not only against skepticism but also against entrenched habits and the shadows of doubt lurking in the minds of her colleagues. As she walked through the hallway, the echo of her own voice hung in her ears, affirming her audacity. Yet, the residual anxiety clawed at her as she considered Danny's probing question. What if she could not deliver the results she had promised? The specter of failure loomed omnipresent. Was she equipped to navigate the waves of expectations building behind her? Reaching her office, Amelia closed the door, the sound providing a brief barrier against the outside world. She leaned against it, taking a moment to breathe. The walls seemed to close in. How would she ensure her directives were followed? True change demanded not just a new strategy but a massive shift in company culture. Her cultural vision, a tapestry of trust she had tried to weave, could easily unravel under internal pressure. She reflected on her initial motivations for proposing such radical changes. Reinvention had always been her calling, but now, she questioned her authority. Could she truly lead this transformation? The lingering support from Violet felt fragile. What if the unsettling whispers of dissent grew louder? With her resolve trembling, Amelia picked up her notepad. She needed a plan. Not a broad strokes proposal but actionable, tangible steps, a roadmap that anyone in the company could follow, one that charted both immediate actions and long-term commitments. Brainstorming visually on the notepad, she scribbled cross-functional teams at the top. Beneath it, she mapped out the departments that would need to be involved: marketing, sales, customer service, and HR. Each group would have a role in not just implementing changes but in shaping them, ensuring the process felt collective rather than imposed. As her pen danced across the paper, a flicker of inspiration sparked. What if she scheduled informal sessions? Meetings that encouraged sharing woes and aspirations without the fear of corporate jargon suffocating honest expression? An unorthodox idea began to crystallize: town hall meetings, where employees voiced their concerns directly and collaborated on solutions. Her thoughts raced, fueled by adrenaline. Each scribble brought clarity, revealing her own underlying tenacity and ability to lead. She was not merely a cog in the corporate machine, she was in a powerful position to govern transformation. As evening crept in, Amelia donned her leadership hat and began drafting an email to the entire company, inviting them to participate in the upcoming meetings. As outgoing as she had learned to be, her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Would they embrace her vision or dismiss it as mere rhetoric? While preparing to click send, regret surged through her veins. Images of her colleagues whispering in corners, smirking, or shaking their heads flashed through her mind. She had been vulnerable in the meeting. Would they respect her for it or exploit it? With bated breath, she finally pressed the button, sending the email into the ether. The moment afterward felt like a line drawn in the sand. There was no turning back. Amelia had staked her claim, revealing the depth of her commitment to change. As she turned off her computer and gathered her things, a new thought took hold: opening herself up to criticism would expose her more than she had ever anticipated. But this was the path of growth. Her pursuit wouldn't just shift the company's trajectory, it would redefine her. Later that night, as she settled in bed, the echoes of the day played back like a film reel in her mind. The grind ahead loomed large. She fell asleep wrestling with questions that could alter her professional future. How many people would understand and embrace her vision? What would she do if those she trusted turned against her? The real test was just beginning. As sleep enveloped her, a new undertone danced at the edges of her consciousness. What if the very breakthrough she sought would push some people away, igniting unexpected conflicts amidst her pursuit for integrity? The blaring sound of her alarm pulled Amelia from the depths of uneasy sleep, leaving behind dreams tinged with potential failures and unforeseen consequences. She blinked against the morning light filtering through her curtains, an unwelcome reminder that the day ahead was both an opportunity and an open mouth ready to swallow her whole. With steely determination, she pushed the weight of doubt aside, transforming that energy into focus. As she dressed, an internal dialogue blossomed. Today marked the first of the town hall meetings. Would it be a watershed moment for her management strategy or a catastrophic misstep? She chose to believe in the former. Confidence doused her fear, infusing her movements with purpose. When she glanced into the mirror, she recognized a leader staring back, not just a participant in corporate dynamics but a catalyst for change. Arriving at the office, she could feel the atmosphere thick with expectation. The unstructured gathering time would pave the way for open dialogue. Her heart raced as she stepped into the designated conference room, which echoed with muted chatter and scattered seating. There was an unusual energy in the air, a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Amber, from marketing, wavered at the door, her lips pressed into a thin line of skepticism. Amelia sensed the hesitation. "Hey, Amber. Glad you could make it. We're all in this together," she said, attempting to inject warmth into her voice. The words felt heavy, almost desperate. Amber nodded, though her eyes betrayed reticence. The unspoken undercurrent was clear. Amelia could feel the judgment lurking. But the real challenge lay ahead. The first members began filling the room, and Amelia stood at the front, mentally rehearsing her opening remarks, yet, right before she began, Danny strode in. His presence loomed, magnetic yet suffocating. He settled into a corner, arms crossed, his expression tight. She swallowed against the tightness in her throat and launched into her plan, outlining the intention behind the town hall, a space for honest insight where everyone could express their thoughts and concerns. The initial responses were tepid, a mixture of hesitant agreement and awkward silence. But Amelia pressed forward, determined to create genuine engagement. "I invited you all here not just to listen to me but to share what matters to you." As the minutes passed, attendees began to break the ice. Hands tentatively rose, voices emerged one by one, and Amelia found herself both enlightened and bewildered. Concerns about workload surged, tailored suggestions about collaboration emerged, and even frustrations with company policies bubbled to the surface. Unraveled words hinted at deeply rooted issues long buried beneath bureaucracy, yet amid these collective expressions, she noticed Danny, unwaveringly quiet. The contrast between the vibrant exchanges and his stillness felt like a challenge. As someone who thrived on his charismatic presence, he wielded unspoken power. Should she confront it subtly or let it simmer? The choice ignited a spark of defiance within her. Finally, Amelia addressed the room. "What we're discussing is more than just work, it's about us." She turned her gaze toward Danny, inviting the eruption of silence. "Danny, I'd like to hear what you think about this approach. You bring valuable insights." His eyes, once piercing, now narrowed, signaling a thunderstorm gathering. Amelia's heart raced. She had taken an enormous risk. Would she be seen as attempting to undermine him or merely engaging in a confident leadership display? He cleared his throat carefully, the tension palpable, as he articulated his viewpoint, a melange of skepticism and more significant truths hidden beneath layers of corporate norms. Amelia leaned in, prepared to respond, yet his words stripped bare the simplicity of her vision and showcased the fear of real change. It stung, feeling both instructive and critical, but Amelia anchored herself in the knowledge that the confrontation was necessary. With each point he made, her resolve strengthened. These sessions were a trial by fire, and she understood now more than ever that leading change meant facing dissent head-on, steering through chaos without losing sight of the destination. When the meeting wrapped up, Amelia emerged transformed. Her vision had fractured but also refined, revealing the innumerable complexities she had previously overlooked. She had opened herself up not just for dialogue but also to conflict, a journey rife with discomfort. As she walked back to her office, she felt the weight of the day's exchanges coalescing into clarity. There would be disruptions ahead, with emotions raw and contradicting. Still, could an impending wave of opposition sharpen her leadership or fracture it completely? The question loomed heavily, igniting a blend of excitement and fear in her gut. The reality was that an unpredictable path lay ahead. But what she didn't know was how deep the fractures would go and what she'd unearth while attempting to mend them. Her willingness to engage could unravel entire threads of her carefully woven strategy. Would she be able to stitch them back together in strength, or would the unraveling consume her vision completely? The following morning greeted Amelia with a sense of urgency that had quickly replaced the hesitance she once felt. She sat at her desk, sifted through a mountain of emails and strategy documents, while thoughts of the town hall replayed in her mind. Each critique seemed to amplify the voices of the employees, and she recognized their skepticism mirrored her own self-doubt. Determined to absorb every word spoken in that conference room, she formed a plan. The disconnection she sensed between departments needed to be addressed. Collaboration, she decided, would be the key. Nothing would be achieved without breaking down organizational silos. She breathed deeply, reminding herself that every strong leader encounters friction, it was how she responded that would either forge connections or widen chasms. With a renewed sense of purpose, she called for a follow-up session, one that would bridge those who had felt stifled and unheard. This meeting wouldn't just collect concerns, it would start to construct a foundation based on collaboration. Crafting her invitation, Amelia carefully framed the upcoming session as an opportunity for each team to forge alliances. She envisioned partitions melting away, employees sharing their ideas throughout the journey. Would they see her as the architect of unity or as an imposter? Time rolled on. The day arrived, and with it a flurry of nervous energy. As Amelia entered the meeting room, the atmosphere buzzed with tentative hope. Each face reflected a mixture of boredom and curiosity, but it was Amber's face that caught Amelia's eye, a flicker of uncertainty shadowing her enthusiasm. Her shoulders were tense, lips pursed tight in contemplation. "Today, we're focusing on generating innovative solutions," Amelia announced, hyper-aware of the simmering skepticism lingering in the air. "We need to be the change agents within our organization. What better way than collaborating across teams?" She directed the conversation toward specific department representatives, inviting them to share not just their challenges but also their aspirations. As voices started to flow freely, she remained vigilant, keen to observe reactions and emotions far beyond the surface. Productivity and morale had to be reignited, but could she sustain this newfound momentum? Amber finally spoke up, her voice shaky but resolute. "Every time we try to innovate, we hit a wall of policies and layers of approval. It feels like we're doing double the work just to get anywhere." The room fell silent, absorbing the stark reality in her words. Amelia leaned in, challenging the instinctive urge to defend the administrative structures in place. "What if we brainstormed a way to streamline this process? What can we remove to facilitate our creativity instead of suppressing it?" The discussion that followed was a blend of proposals, frustrations, and tentative encouragement. Amelia utilized each contribution, actively steering the conversation toward actionable strategies rather than wallowing in complaints. With each passing moment, she found confidence swelling within her, fueled by the pulsating energy of collaboration. Halfway through, she sensed a vibration of discontent again, this time rippling from Danny, who sat visibly stiff in the back. Their previous confrontation hung thick in the room, and she was acutely aware of the influence he wielded. His reserved demeanor begged for acknowledgement again. "Danny," Amelia said, keeping her tone steady, "I would love to hear your perspectives. You've navigated these systems longer than most. It would be a misstep to overlook your experience." He shifted in his chair, meeting her gaze. "Sure, Amelia. But real change requires more than just talk. We need to challenge the norms, not just step over them with more meetings," he replied, and a precarious tension sparked once more. She felt the weight of his challenge. "I agree. Let us explore how we can do that," she replied, embracing this new layer of engagement without letting her heart betray her composure. The dichotomy of her responsibility to innovate amid an existing structure was daunting. As the meeting continued, shifts in dynamics became apparent. Employees who once shied away from vocalizing their ideas started to emerge, armed with increasingly complex insights. Amelia felt invigorated, enlightened by their resilience and inspiration. Yet, in the undercurrent pulsating through the discussions, she sensed an emerging conflict: how to balance respect for progressive thought with the realities of the established system. Walking back to her office, Amelia's mind swirled. She felt hope intermingled with an unnerving realization that not all shifts lead to harmony. As change beckoned, would she find support in the voices straining to be heard, or would the resistance splinter her efforts? The question echoed hauntingly, driving home that true leadership often means navigating a sea of contradictions, and what lay beyond the horizon remained ominous yet teeming with possibility. What Amelia didn't anticipate was the brewing storm that threatened to erupt under the surface of their newfound discourse. Would she be able to steer her vision through it, or would the very foundation she sought to strengthen begin to crumble before her? Amelia Johnson stepped back into the boardroom, her hands steady, despite the cacophony of apprehension swirling inside her. The decision rested on the precipice of transformation, the culmination of her vision, the promise of a future where every voice mattered. Gone were the days of being overlooked or ignored. She stood resolute, ready to advocate for not just herself, but for all those who had felt unseen. Amelia had transformed from a cleaning lady with hidden dreams to a force pushing for change right under the polished veneer of corporate routine. Nathan's presence in the room instilled a fresh wave of confidence. His earlier support had ignited her drive. During the past few weeks, she had engaged with employees from every level, absorbing their stories, challenges, and aspirations. The vibrant energy of their conversations fueled her proposal, a comprehensive initiative aimed at fostering inclusivity and empowering voices that had remained muffled for far too long. Today, I'm not just presenting a plan, we're drafting a new chapter in our company's narrative, Amelia began, the words flowing with assurance. She stood at the center, a stark contrast to the timid woman who once scrubbed floors in this very space. Amelia laid out a structured strategy for the implementation of mentorship programs and workshops, echoing the raw voices of her colleagues. Each proposed initiative was not a mere formality but a carefully crafted opportunity for personal and professional growth, resonating with every silent plea for change she had gathered. The responses around the table shifted, a subtle curiosity eclipsed skepticism. "We can't continue down a path where voices are lost in the shadows," she articulated. "It is imperative that we understand the systemic barriers our employees face and dismantle them." Each word was a testament to her evolution. As she spoke, she noticed Nathan leaning forward, his eyes betraying a mix of admiration and conviction. He was the one in power, and yet here she was, commanding attention. "I've consulted with various departments," she continued, "and the feedback is unanimous. We need to adapt, not just for our company but for the people we serve." The room's atmosphere thickened with anticipation, pulsating with the electrical charge of change as they absorbed her vision. Danny's demeanor radiated skepticism. "Amelia, how do you plan to ensure that these changes translate into tangible results? We're talking about restructuring ways of working that have been in place for generations." His tone, though critical, held a hint of intrigue. Amelia met his gaze, stealing her resolve. "Real change requires a willingness to confront the status quo," she replied. "If we simply introduce new programs without accountability, we risk failure. Transparency must run alongside every initiative. Monitoring progress and gathering feedback consistently will be essential." Her heart pounded, but the weight of doubt had receded. Instead, pride surged within her. She was not just proposing change but leading a revolution of thought. The questions swirling around the table shifted from skepticism to constructive dialogue. "I've seen firsthand how culture shifts when people feel valued," one board member finally interjected, an unexpected ally for Amelia. "This could define our legacy." Applause was not far behind. Recognition spread, transforming the doubts into affirmations. By the meeting's end, she had secured the commitment to form cross-functional committees that would pilot her initiatives. Accountability structures would be in place. Change would no longer just be a looming shadow but an embedded concept within the company's very fabric. Satisfaction flooded her veins as she stepped away from the boardroom. The tension that accompanies moments of vulnerability and triumph settled like a warm blanket around her shoulders. Amelia had conquered the apprehension that had once shackled her, proving to herself that she was worthy not just of a voice, but of leadership. Weeks later, with the initiatives in motion and momentum growing, Amelia walked down the same corridor where silence had once deafened her spirit. Employees smiled in acknowledgement, conversations buzzed with excitement about the changes unfolding, and the once hidden camaraderie of shared experiences became palpable. Finally receiving recognition for her efforts, Amelia stood before the company in a town hall meeting. She felt at home. "Together, we are reshaping our workplace into a sanctuary for all voices, where each individual is empowered to contribute to our continued success," she declared, her voice strong and unmistakably confident. Amelia's journey had culminated in not just professional achievement but personal transformation. No longer lingering in the shadows, she had etched her name not only in the company's initiatives but in their culture, creating space for authenticity, vulnerability, and most importantly, belonging. This was her moment, crafted not from mere chance but through relentless resolve and courage. A standing ovation met her conclusion, voices finally lifting in unison, a powerful testament to the changes she had catalyzed, and now, as her story of triumph encapsulated the embodiment of poetic transformation, she beckoned her audience. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Conclusion: this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share.